So, first of all, who am I? My name is Wolfpack10. Most people just call me Wolf. What do I do in game? I lead fleets. How long have I been doing it? I've been playing EVE since about 2006. That's very off and on. I took easily a year and a half off where I was doing education stuff, didn't have time. I've been realistically leading fleets since 2013. I did some work before that, and not all of those fleets at 2013 were quality. I joined Razer when my corporation did in 2015. That was about September. Since about 2 years of EVE, I have been playing EVE just to be a fleet commander. I don't rat, I don't mine, I don't really do anything but lead fleets. I'm very lucky within Razer. We have a reward system. If you lead a significant amount of fleets, you get enough money to sustain your accounts. One, maybe two if you go crazy. And I mean crazy. So I am, within Razer, a senior fleet commander. Best way to describe it, junior fleet commanders, or what you guys might call skirmish commanders, are the kind of people who have just joined up. They're looking to take fun fleets. They're looking to do simple stuff. You get your fleet commanders who might go out and shoot pauses, run the more larger scale ops, and then you get someone who does what I do, which is the more senior stuff. So major SOV engagements, fighting over R64s, large coordination actions between multiple alliances, all that kind of very complicated stuff. What I want to talk to you guys today about is not how to be a fleet commander, because every fleet commander does things differently. Everyone's going to have their own preferred way of doing this or that. What I want to talk to you about is what life is like. So I've tried to divide this into three kind of sections. The first thing I want to talk to you guys about is communications. So most of you will have TeamSpeak or Mumble or Ventrilo, and you will talk to your friends. A lot of you will probably use a system like Jabber, get pings, maybe have a alliance-wide general chat room, and some of you will probably use your forums quite a bit. I personally don't. There are a lot more methods of communication out there. I'm not really going to go into too much detail about them. What I want to talk to you about is that as a line member, you see communication as a way to talk to your friends, and for example, if you're on a fleet, a way to hear instructions. As a fleet commander, you tend to see it as a more continuous stream of information. Many of you have probably heard the phrase information overload. As a fleet commander, this happens quite often. For example, voice comms. Many of you have sat in a fleet and it's been very chaotic. There have been lots of people talking. Some of you have been fleets that are very quiet, where nobody's talking. For a fleet commander, often you find yourself having 3 or 4 conversations at once. It's not uncommon for me to be leading a fleet where I'm giving instructions. Anchor up, shoot this guy, micro warp drive. At the same time, I'm having a scout relay information. The enemy are here, they're doing this. They're loading this ammo, they're warping here. At the same time, I may have a spy, a high-level spy perhaps, telling me who their fleet commanders are. I may have other people in other fleets, other fleet commanders, other junior fleet commanders telling me, we are here, we are doing this, we are coming to aid you. It's not uncommon just on voice comms to have 3 or 4 conversations at the same time. And that does really mean 3 or 4 people talking at the same time. So when you have that level of information overload, it's very easy to miss things. The other side of this is you have your text-based. So for example, Jabber. Your average player might have maybe, 4, 5 chat rooms in Jabber that they regularly look at. Yeah, some fleet commanders will have anywhere from 10 to 20, and that's just rooms. Once you add in private conversations, you can end up with anywhere from, I think on one engagement, I had nearly 50 conversations open in Jabber, which is an absolute nightmare. So again, you end up in this situation where it's very quick and easy to get overloaded with more information you know what to do with. Add on to that within Razer and within my corporation, we use WhatsApp an awful lot, which is a fantastic method of communicating when you're not at your PC. And again, the average person who uses WhatsApp may see 500 messages a day. I see more like 5,000 messages a day. So again, it's really, really easy to just get bombarded with so much information you don't know what's going on. So the other side of this is sometimes you can end up in a situation where you don't get enough information. Not everyone speaks English. Not everyone communicates the same way. For example, some of you might say system name is CTAC-H. Others might say it is something completely different. Some people might say anchor, some people might say approach, some people might say orbit. A scout might say the system is red, a scout might say the system has 100 enemies, or a scout might just say, oh my god, spike, spike, spike. Yeah. So communications is a very big part of being a fleet commander. And the biggest problem with communications is that whilst you can teach people how to communicate, you can't teach people how to... You can teach someone how to communicate the way you would like, but you can't teach someone how to absorb that information and use it and then react to it. It's more of something you either can or can't do. And there's an awful lot of fleet commanders that will either excel here or they will find it very difficult. So moving on from communications, you have commitment. There is no escape. So for some of you, you will play Eve 2 hours a day. Considering most of you here at Fanfest are a little more involved, I would expect some of you to play anywhere from 4 to 6 hours a day. That's 4 to 6 hours where you are committed to playing Eve. On a fleet, you may have 3 hours of fleet time. Most of you will have the ability to walk away at any point during that fleet. Your fleet commander might not be happy about it, usually they're not, but you can walk away. But if you're leading 250 people, it's rather hard to just walk away. So commitment for a fleet commander is a slightly different meaning, different experience. When you ping a fleet, you're committing to that fleet, you're committing to that action. That might be 20 minutes, quick undock, gank some things, dock back up. That could be 5 hours of hell where you are camped into a pause and you are outnumbered 3 to 1 and can't go anywhere. The other side to this is that if, for example, your dog throws up on the carpet, you can't just say, okay guys, we're going to stop fighting, I'm going to go clean this mess up. So commitment as a fleet commander is a bit of it's a very deep rabbit hole to jump down. Many of you will join a fleet, you will participate, and you will leave. That fleet took 2 hours. It's not unusual. Most fleet commanders will do some sort of prep before their fleet. I would say at least half an hour's worth of at least talking to people. I personally have done meetings when Razor and FCon were working together, on average 2 hours before every major SOV fight, where we sat down and allocated who's doing what, where, when, and why. So when you see a 2-hour fleet, you're actually seeing maybe 3 or 4 hours worth of planning and prep. But it doesn't end when the fleet ends. Some alliances will ask you to do after-action reports. Some alliances will ask you to do debriefings. Some alliances might just say, hey, you blew shit up, good job. On average, for myself, a fleet that takes 3 hours involves at least an hour of prep and an hour of post. So that's, what, 5 hours? If we have major SOV engagements, I've spent 9 or 10 hours before being involved in the planning, the running, and the prep for the next engagement. So there's a big commitment that you have to post up. Now some of you might be thinking that, now hold on, I've led fleets. I've led fleets. I didn't do all this. And just like in everything in Eve, there is a level that you choose to go to. So a junior fleet commander may choose to just log in and lead a gate camp, and there's no real commitment. If he has 20 dudes camping a Stargate and he needs to go, he can save them at a pause, he can send his Svipple gang home. It's not the end of the world. But if you're leading your 250-man fleet with a secondary 250-man fleet supporting you, with 200-man interceptor and Svipple fleets backing you up, a hacking fleet, a bombing fleet, and multiple allied coalition and all sorts of other bits and pieces sat on standby, you can't just walk away. It'd be nice if you could some days. So commitment is something that you have to consider at every level of being a fleet commander. So when you add the commitment and the communication side of being a fleet commander together, this has quite an impact on the way you play the game. It has an impact on the way you lead your life, which is kind of what I'm here to talk to you about, is the way that being a fleet commander impacts your life. So many of you will have said that, you've stayed up late, you've alarm clocked this timer, you've made special arrangements to be in-game at a certain time. And it's very similar for a fleet commander, only it can get far worse. You've probably all heard that some fleet commanders do lots of work and then burn out very quickly, whilst others do relatively less work and survive longer. On average, I receive a message when I wake up, usually around 8 o'clock in the morning, or 7:30. That message will involve all kinds of information about what's going on in the day. From there, I will end up having to shift my daily schedule, my tea breaks, my lunch breaks at work around coordinating and planning fleets. This is a very real impact of what I do. When I get home from work, some days I can come home from work, have a shower. I have quite a manual labor job. Some days I can come home from work and need to sit down then and there. Some days I'll need to get off work early. It's very easy to get very involved in being a fleet commander in a good alliance. It's very easy to have a massive impact on your life. For example, I was out shopping once in town, received a message, and had to immediately drop what I was doing, rush home and lead fleets. So, when you look at it from a real life point of view, the communications alone is extremely daunting. Without trying to make it into too much of a joke, I can go through a phone battery in about 3 hours. On average, 5,000 messages a day through WhatsApp might sound kind of cool and fun, and no, it's really fucking annoying. Really annoying. So, when you try to measure the impact that it has on your life, it's very daunting realizing that you dedicate so much of your time to a game. For most of you, you will plan your lives around going and seeing your friends, work, maybe getting a meal. For me, a big part of planning my life involves being a fleet commander. I don't know who's in here, but for example, if Out of Sight decide to ref an R64, suddenly that plan to go out and have drinks with my friends ends up on hold because I need to lead this fleet. There's quite a big impact. And again, it's not at every level. A lot of people will hear this and think that I'm talking in a way to make myself sound like I do a lot more work than perhaps I do. The reality is that your average fleet commander probably does more work preparing and leading fleets than most alliance COs do in just managing their alliance. Believe it or not, in EVE, talented fleet commanders, especially at a higher level, are something that's disappearing. Junior fleet commanders, those taking out the small roams, they're about the same. But those people that are willing to do the commitment, that are willing to have that impact on their life, they are disappearing. Anyway, that's about all I wanted to talk to you about. I didn't want to keep this too long, so if anybody has any questions, someone will be walking around with a microphone. Please try and keep it on topic. Yes, where is Razor? Here.
Hey, how's it going? I'm the chap with Dreadit.
Hello, Dreadit.
How's it going? So this is a great presentation, and I think I've seen it from what you're saying from our alliance as well, and all of our block level FCs and stuff like that. The burnout is very real. But however, why do you do it? You know, you make it sound so negative up here, and I'm not trying to hit you with anything bad, but why do you do it?
Best reason I can give you for doing it, we had 60 Svipples. We had 60 Svipples. We had 4 Tech 2 frigate logic. It was a very interesting fleet. Is anybody here from Tri? Good, good, good. We sat on a Stargate. Tri, with a 200-man Tengu fleet, refused to move because they were terrified. We took our Svipple fleet down south, and we warped to a random point that I chose purely by coincidence and landed in the middle of 250 interceptors. For 3.5 minutes, we sat in a ball of death, firing guns in all directions, screaming targets and blapping everything. That's why I lead fleets, because it is so much fun. We have died together, we have killed together, we have walked across more of New Eden than I want to think about getting lost, but it is a lot of fun. It's a lot of drama, it's a lot of headache, but it is definitely rewarding.
Oh, thank you for the presentation. I have a question and a comment. First, a question. If you take a look at the EVE Online system of managing gangs, you see wings,
Yes.
squads.
Yes.
Actually, what EVE Online tried to do was to project already some kind of organization, fleet organization within the interface.
Yes.
So my question is, you as a senior fleet commander, can you explain us a bit how the chain of command regarding wings and squads is organized? Because the impression that I get from your presentation is that you actually run your fleet, and this is not at all a negative comment, like a spider organization, meaning you are the spider in the middle, and you, that's the impression I have, you control or try to control everything.
Okay.
So can you explain that? And then my comment is that I've been more involved in fleets as a participant, so not as a commander. And as a participant, it's often extremely boring to be in fleets. So people, after an hour or two, regularly nothing happens. We sit, we wait, we dock, we undock, but actually we wait, and then the fleet is disbanded because the other party has more numbers and we don't have the necessary support in order to help us out. So that's a comment, maybe you can also comment on that.
Okay.
Thanks.
So to go to the first part of this, the in-game fleet structure is not, I do not use it how it was designed. There's more reasons there than I have time to really explain. The best way to word it, our chain of command often goes the way that I believe most do. You will have a fleet commander who is making the decisions on how the fleet works. He's using his fleet warp ability to warp the fleet around, he's broadcasting a target, he's maneuvering the fleet. You'll have a backup fleet commander who has no position within the fleet table in game, and he is there ready to take the position if the fleet commander dies. You will have boosters who are often set remotely. You will have wing commanders who are probably off-grid boosters. You don't use the fleet window and the fleet management system as a wing commander leads a wing. It does happen. We operate something called QRF, which is quick response. They often do work like that. For example, saying wing 1, go over here, go deal with this. Wing 2, go deal with that. That's slightly different to when you're in a main fleet and you're flying, for example, our Hurricane Sleipnir doctrine. If I try and split them off, it gets very complicated. We don't do anything like that. It just doesn't work with the tactics of EVE. For example, if I send 20 Hurricanes and 10 Sleipnirs and some Logi to go and do something, yeah, that could work, but the chances are they're just going to get attacked and slaughtered, and it just gets too complicated. As far as kind of your comment on boredom and things like that, I really don't want to talk down about whoever it is that's leading these fleets, but that's not how we lead fleets. I personally prefer to send a ping, often with very little information, just saying something like Warfleet up under Wolfpack. Get in the comms, sit there, chat amongst yourselves, I'll let you know when I know more. Prime example of this, we had 250 Sleipnir Hurricane. We went somewhere, we sat in a dead-end system. We sat there for, including the form-up, for actually building the fleet and getting it out there, probably an hour and a half. And I just said to everyone, chat, be social, I will talk to you when I can, I'm working on things. And then all of a sudden, we were able to drop on an enemy dread group, blap some dreads, blap some fleets, and then walk away. So I really fully understand that some fleet members find it very dull in times like that. It's the one thing that I really wish I could do more to alleviate, but it's not always possible. Something that I think a lot of fleet commanders do is call a fleet without thinking about why they're calling that fleet and what they're trying to do. And it's very important to have very clear objectives. Yeah, the fleet window in-game is not ideal for the way that fleets are used in EVE. There are lots of complications with it. But at the same time, in some instances, especially when you're doing small gang stuff, it works quite well. And I think it's the same with fleets. Some fleets, when you form them, they go very well, they're very fast, they're very fun, and other times there's just a lot of sitting around and waiting. You have to get all your cards in line, and it's just the way it goes sometimes.
We'll go right over here.
Oh.
Hey, Wolfpack. I've flown with you. I was in that fleet, by the way, that dropped on the dreads. And we killed a nice gang on the way home as well.
Yes.
Yeah. I have a question. The UQ9 iHub battle. How was that from your perspective? Because
the UQ9 iHub battle was absolutely horrible. We had something like 500 Sleipnir Hurricane sat ready to fire, with 250 Macarial sat ready to fire, watching a Stargate. The intention was the enemy fleets would jump in, and we would, because we're mean and horrible people, alpha fleet commanders, and then walk away. What happened was the enemy jumped in, the server hit insane levels of tie-dye and lag, and then the enemy started decloaking. Broadcasts failed to work, weapons failed to cycle properly, alpha didn't occur the way it was supposed to, and even fleet warp didn't work for, that was something like 48 seconds it took before a fleet warp occurred. So that was really enjoyable. That was really enjoyable. It was really fun though, watching 400 and something enemies try to deal with our Jamstar. That was really fun. They killed 3 POS modules. Yes, POS bowling is a fantastic sport. PL, if you're in here. Anyone else?
Hi. Quick question. I have never played as a fleet commander before, but I play another game called Armor. And in that game, I play as a comms officer for our group. Is there any application for comms officers in the future to try and disperse the responsibilities of the fleet commander? And has that been considered before, and why has it not been implemented?
Yes and no. It's more a limitation on the way communications work. For example, I will have a room full of fleet commanders and dedicated people who do very special jobs who can talk directly into my ear. And when they talk to me, their voice is amplified, and the voices of the main fleet who are in the main fleet room, they're turned down a little bit so I can hear very detailed information. I have flown fleets where we use Logi in a separate room. I have flown fleets where we have fast tackle in other rooms. I've flown fleets where we've done all kinds of shit to do with maneuvering each other around in the comms rooms to get it better. And sometimes it works, sometimes it really doesn't. One thing that has always worked very well is if I'm, for example, sitting over the shoulder of one of our junior fleet commanders, I will say to him, you broadcast the targets, I will maneuver the fleet. That actually works very well. I'll leave them to call their targets, decide how to go through killing the enemy, whilst I will maneuver the fleet, because perhaps they're not experienced, or the other way around. They will be doing the maneuvers, and I will be saying, like, we need to kill this, we need to kill this, we need to kill this, so that we win the engagement. So the problem is that it happens very quickly, and the time lost between relaying information can often get you very killed. Especially if you are fighting enemies who are very good with probes and using bubbles and dragging and positioning. So.
Got your next question right here. So as like, in my opinion, the #1 content creator in the game, the fleet commander, what could CCP do to improve your experience and make your life easier? Like interface-wise?
That is a very big question.
Yeah?
Could you try and be just a little more specific? Because that's a huge question.
Is there a tool, or, you know, could they redo the fleet window, or is
Redoing the fleet window and the way boosts work would be a huge help. The broadcast system isn't ideal for the way it gets used a lot of the time. There are lots of little things. There's nothing major. Something that did occur to me a while ago is that whilst I can sort my overview by distance, what I would like to do is be able to sort my overview by distance weighted. For example, show me in groups the closest enemy Logi, the closest enemy DPS, the closest enemy Tech 3s. So give the ability to add a weight to what's in your overview. So if you set, for example, sort by name, it will alphabetically list every ship. If you have a weighting system, it will alphabetically list whatever's the heaviest first. So the Logi, then the DPS. Something like that would make it a lot easier, but there are so many little things that have been carried over from when Eve was much younger to what Eve is now that I could talk for hours about the little things that drive me nuts. Yeah, like if you want to find me afterwards, I'll be happy to talk with anyone about more specific stuff that's kind of more detail orientated.
Hi, I have a question. First, I'd like to say I used to fly with you also back in LI3.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so.
I am a very different person.
Yeah. I wanted to know, our corporation has the privilege of having a lot of seasoned FCs. But from your perspective, how do you decide what doctrines that you're going to fly for a specific situation? And then at the same time, how do you call your targets? Is it just come from experience, or is it like, is there some sort of trick to it?
Okay, this is kind of in twofold. Some of this you can teach, and some of this you just have to have the ability to deal with. If anybody's ever been on a fleet with a junior FC who's frozen, this is, again, something that you just can't teach. You just have to react, and you have to react right. There's no way to explain it better. Picking a doctrine depends an awful lot on what you have available. So within Razor, we have HAD. I'll use HAD. We had, during the UQ9 Razor FCon joint operations, Svipples. We had Hurricane Fleet Sleipnir doctrine. We had our Tech 3 doctrine, and we had a few other little bits and pieces. For example, the T3s, I know if we lose any, we're losing skill points. They're also very expensive. So they were held in reserve for fights that basically we don't want to lose regardless of cost. The Sleipnir Hurricane doctrine is very versatile. It's not perfect, but it works in most environments. So that was our general kind of what we would call, for example, unless the enemy brought something that was completely impossible to fight with them, like... no, I'd still use Sleipnirs, they're fun. And the Svipple doctrine is, again, fantastic, but if you take Svipples versus T3s, it's going to go badly. You have to kind of look at what the enemy could fly, what you could fly, and how valuable is the timer, the objective. If it's not valuable, and you know the enemy are going to bring something dangerous, perhaps take something more fun. Initiative use their micro-jump drive destroyer fleet to have fun when the enemy brings something big and expensive and pull off small ships. Target calling is, it's a bit of a hit and miss game. For example, if you are working in smaller scale, you need to go for the logistics first, because the logistics are usually weaker than the mainline ships, unless in certain circumstances, and often you won't be able to kill a mainline ship, whereas if you kill, say, half their logistics, you can then go and kill their main line. When you're fighting 250 versus 250, you'll kill something. So you then have to make the decision that, are you going to kill faster than the enemy, in which case kill their DPS? Are the enemy going to kill faster than you, in which case you need to kill their logistics, because after a certain point, you won't break their reps. Target calling is something that you can teach, and again, when I said about weighting things, there is a kind of like a weighted priority order, but at the same time, for example, we've engaged with Sleipnir Hurricanes. We were very, very fortunate and put 250 Sleipnir Hurricane point blank to 250 Tri-Rail Tengus. I didn't call targets, I just said shoot the closest thing to you. And they were dying very rapidly. And that's another way of calling targets, is not to call them by shoot this, shoot this, shoot this, but instead to say sort alphabetically, sort by distance, load an overview that shows only Logi, load an overview that shows only recons, or just broadcast the fleet commanders and watch them cry.
I was just wondering how you brief your fleets before you take them out. Do you tell them what you're going to do so they actually know how long they're going to have to wait before you find the targets, or do you just take them out without any information?
FC, how long's fleet? Yeah, I get asked that a lot. What I try to tell people is give them a rough idea of what's going on. I really like talking to my fleets and telling them as much as I can. We often have story time. So if we don't go somewhere, or if we do this, that, or the other, I always try and give them a story time. I believe that there is always a spy. There is always a spy, so whatever. We try to have a little briefing as we undock. You know, I'm the FC, please load this ammo, please approach like this, do this like this, sort your overview like this. We do try to do briefings like that. I will often tell people that we are just waiting on the last few things when we're sat on a Titan, for example, but the biggest problem is that once you start giving away too much information, you always have a spy. Always. Even if it's just one guy who texts his mate saying, hey, we're here, we're going to have a fight. There's always a spy. So you have to be very careful how much information you give away. And I do really feel for fleets when they're told to just log in, sit there, shut up and wait, because it's not fun.
How has FCing changed the way that you FC?
It's made it more complicated. In some ways, it hasn't changed, and in other ways it has. So before, you would bring together 1, 2, 3 fleets, tell them that we need to hold this grid and fight there. With FCing, especially in some of the engagements where we were in a position where we had huge numbers and the enemy didn't fight us, we were using, for example, we defended Estaki at one point with the aid of FCon and Initiative. We had 250 Sleipnir Hurricane fleet pointed at the Stargate, waiting for something to come in. We had a QRF fleet of Sipples that was 100-man strong, designed to just fly around and clear off anything that gets in our way. We had a QRF-2, which was 50-man Sipple fleet that was dedicated to just supporting us as the fleet. Hold that guy, hold this guy. We had a bomber fleet. We had a hack fleet. The hack fleet had its own QRF built into it. There's a lot more elements to FCing now. It's not a case of one fleet commander leads one fleet, or one fleet commander leads 3 fleets and they all just follow him wherever he goes. You have to have this junior fleet commander, regular fleet commander membership that's able to do things. It's not better or worse from my point of view, it's just different. Anyone else with questions?
I fly a lot of fleets, and part of the reason I do that is not just for the fun of the fleets, which is great, but because I'm interested in developing my skills in the roles I fly. You're obviously flying at quite a high level as an FC, and you've got a lot of experience. So my question is kind of twofold: is how important to you is it within the fleets you fly that you're developing, or do you just go out and fly and do the things you've been doing? Is it important to you to be developing those skills and changing the way you're flying fleets? And if it is, how do you go about that?
The best way to explain this is probing. There is no kind of, this is how you probe as a fleet commander. I get lots of people ask me like, oh, can you teach me to probe? I can teach you how probing works. I can teach you how I do it. But at the end of the day, you've just got to go and do it. And you've got to keep doing it. And you've got to fuck up. And you've got to keep going. I have killed many fleets. I have lost many ships. And honestly, the best way you learn is to just go and do. You can ask all the advice in the world. You can ask for people to support you and help you when you're leading your fleets. But unless you go and do and kind of develop that that unconscious train of thought that you need to be able to make it work. So I ride motorcycles, and they say that a motorcycle rider has an area of their brain known as the center of plan of action. And it's often far more developed than anyone else that drives a car or whatever. And that is because you will often find yourself reacting without realizing you've reacted. Riding a bike in a rain and you hit say like a manhole cover and the bike slips, you'll react without thinking about it. The only way you develop that is to just go and do it. And it's the same with being a fleet commander. You have to react without realizing you're reacting, to see the enemy fleet land on grid and know just at a glance that you need to go for this guy and this guy and this guy. And the only way you learn it is to just go and do it. Sorry. Was there somebody over there?
As a junior FC, what's like the best way to find content? Like, should you look through scouts? Should you look through timers? Like, what do you think is the best way to?
Where roughly do you fleet command? I won't ask for an alliance or something, but
Goons, Karma Fleet.
Former fleet. See, I'm not a roaming fleet commander. I got lost. I got really lost. I don't do wormholes. You can use things like Dotlan to track where ratting is going on, but any active ratting system will have scouts, so you probably won't get anywhere. You can try and use wormholes to find content, but honestly, look at timer boards, try and work out what you think will get a fight, and then just go in third party. If that's not an option, go find the enemy stations and just go and sit in an enemy solar system. Don't camp the undock, because then they're not going to undock, but just sit in their system. Take the piss out of them and ask them to undock. Don't be a dick. This is the one thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that if you're a dick, people won't like you. They won't want to know you. They won't want to get involved. They won't want to fight you. Razor FCon often good fight in local, even if it's a loss, even if it's a whelp or whatever. And I've heard a lot of response from other fleet commanders and things like that through certain networks I have access to, that they really enjoy that people respond well to being treated well. So as a junior fleet commander, just go to wherever your nearest enemy is and, poke fun at him. Don't be an asshole, just poke fun at him. Wait for them to send something. It's the best way.
All right, thanks.
Do you have another question?
Was that a question there? No. Anyone else?
Way back in the back.
Oh.
I know a couple months ago they talked about getting rid of fleet warps, where the
Yes.
pilots have to fly their own ships instead of kind of F1 monkeying. Do you have any thoughts either way on that topic?
I would have stopped leading fleets. So, in EVE, the idea that everyone's going to fly their own ship is great. And in 20 dude size fleets, it's great. 250 dudes trying to fly their own ship is hell on earth. 250 dudes trying to just reload at the same time is hell on earth. The problem with the fleet warp idea wasn't that they were going to take it away completely, is that they were going to make it so that you can't fleet warp to bookmarks, and that would have been very difficult. I saw a fantastic video that came up recently. I don't know if any of you guys saw it. I can't remember if it was Brave or Karma Fleet or who it was. I think it was Dreadit, possibly, trying to get into a Dominix. Don't know if any of you guys saw that. They were trying to get into a abandoned Dominix, and the MJD destroyer jumped it miles and miles and miles, all the way past where they had their bookmarks for their space station they live in. And there's a sea of hundreds of bookmarks. As a fleet commander, you easily have that many, and you're maneuvering your fleet around, you're probing the enemy fleet, you're warping all the time. To lose that would cause all kinds of interesting problems. For example, the enemy fleet lands 400 kilometers from you. You spin your probes, you want to warp your fleet to the enemy fleet at 0, because, you've got testicles. Your options are now limited to either warping yourself to the enemy fleet at 0, and then telling your fleet to warp to you, which is not going to work. Warping a cloaked alt to the enemy fleet, and then warping to your cloaked alt, which may or may not decloak your cloaked alt, and by the time you've done all this, the enemy fleet's gone. Just removing the fleet warp mechanic was a nice idea, it just wouldn't have worked very well. Any more? Cool, right, well, that's the end of this. If anybody has anything they want to ask that's very specific, very detail-orientated, I'm more than happy to go into it later. But, yeah, enjoy Fanfest.